conversion. All right. So what are some things, was that you, Quan, said that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What are some things we can do to improve our lead conversion if that's one of our problems?
Role play.
Has anybody had role play change their life? Anybody? Oh. Explain role play, Steve.
Roleplay just prepares you for what to say whenever you're talking to anyone at any period of time, because you've actually gone through scenarios with people that you can fail with, as opposed to losing clients. So when you know what to say and you know how to objection handle and build value and get people excited, then they're excited. And you ask all the right questions as opposed to, you know yourself to death. So I would say that that's probably pretty valuable.
Yeah, let's practice on each other. Let's not practice on our clients, because we just discussed, right? We'll just go a $500,000 property. There's a $15,000 commission on the line. Let's not fuck up when there's $15,000 on the line. Let's fuck up when 30 minutes of our time is on the line. Like, that's the role play. I mean, there's literally nothing better that you can do to increase your lead conversion than role play on a regular basis. One of the reason we role play is so we know exactly what to do based on what they do. So I always look at Peyton Manning. By far not the best athlete ever to play quarterback. I mean, if you ever saw him run, it was like a newborn giraffe trying to run around. Like, yeah, insane. Like, Peyton Manning was not a great athlete. He was not the fastest. He didn't have the strongest arm, but he's going to go down in history as one of the best quarterbacks ever. Why? Because his ability to read the defense and see if they're lined up like this, then we've got to do that. And if they line up like that, we've got to do this. Again, not the best athlete by any means. There's zero argument about that. But he still will go down as one of the best quarterbacks because he spent so much time studying material, studying video and watching other teams and watching the formations that they would line up in. And he knew exactly if this guy lined up here, or even if he turned his body here or here, watching their eyes, watching what the other person's doing, he knew exactly how to react to those things. That is what role play will do for you guys. You don't have to be the most talented salesperson. I'm not a fucking good salesperson at all. I'm terrible. But I know what to say all the time based on what somebody tells me. I'm not the smoothest or any of that stuff. I'm like a Peyton Manning. I'm not great. But I've studied it so many fucking times. I've practiced it so many fucking times that it just, as soon as somebody says something or does something, it automatically, you know exactly what to do. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. It starts to become second nature to you. George St. Pierre, who will go down as one of the best MMA fighters in history, talked about how much he practices to the point where he could fight somebody blindfolded because he could feel, he could sense what the other person's doing in every single move. I mean, him and Jeremy fight MMA like
won the wrestling state championship in one of the states.
Yeah.
You guys saw that ESP. He's blind and he just won his weight class.
Yeah, we do blindfolded wrestling in practice.
Yeah.
You have to anticipate.
Yeah, you've got to know what's coming, and you've got to know if they do this, then I do that. Like if guy's choking me this way, I got to do this, and if he's choking me that way, I've got to do that. Like it's all about knowing what the other person's going to do, and the only way that we get better at that is to practice it. And Tom Brady, who is one of the best quarterbacks ever, and athletically and mentally, right? He doesn't stop practicing, guys. Like he still practices as much as anybody, if not more. He's the first guy there. He's the last guy to leave. Watches more tape than anybody. And he's already the best quarterback in history, but he doesn't stop. So none of us are good enough to where we get to stop. Just because we closed 10 deals last year, 20 deals last year, doesn't mean we're so good that we don't need it anymore. Who are we to not show up to practice every day?
Here's a perfect point to segue out of what you're saying. So here's a question to you. If you're in wrestling and you get into, like someone puts a choke on you,
Right.
what do you do? What would you do? Not 10 different moves, but what happens when somebody puts you in a threatening position?
You stay calm.
Right.
First and foremost,
Yep.
you stay calm. Into the balls.
So that's all I needed.
Okay.
Now what happens when people are unprepared in a choke? What do they do?
Freak out.
Exactly.
They literally choke
that is
themselves.
Yeah.
literally the
They
analogy.
freak out.
That is literally the analogy that happens in everything we do in life, right? What you're prepared for and what you're not. If you're not prepared for those conversations, you will panic. When you panic, we actually start talking more. We start selling and telling and doing all this shit,
Telling isn't selling.
right? And as opposed to just listening and watching what happens and pivoting when you see the opening and being clear of mind. That's it. That's the same similarity.
Jason.
Follow up. I know that's a weakness for all of us, but definitely me, is you got to have systems in place to follow up. So many of us meet with clients, get a phone number, get an email, and then we maybe call them once, maybe call them twice, and we never get back to them. One good thing that Kyle found with Boomtown is he literally puts them in a system, and it automatically is emailing them, texting them, and reminding Kyle when to reach out, right? Having that CRM is huge, and so many of you have a great tool, and because we don't charge you for it, you don't really utilize it. Right, if I charged you $500 a month because I pay a couple grand a month just for Boomtown, you probably know how to handle it better. But since it's free, so many of us just don't tap into what we have. So follow-up to me is huge. And I know I need to get better, but all of us, and I don't know if Nick's in the room, but Nick, we were talking about an open house. That's probably his biggest weakness. He's so excited, he gets people's information, but he doesn't follow up. And you gotta follow up to win.
Yeah, I want to show you, this is a study that got done, I think it was MIT that did this one. All right, so they've studied a bunch of things. So we showed you a chart last week of dollars per hour and all of that stuff. They also have tracked what are the best days to make contact with people. So there's some strategy in the days of the week. But the ones that are most important, best times to contact people. So making calls in the morning, this 8 to 10 starts to fall off after 11. Like this early morning, oh shit. So the early morning, it's like 8 to 11 and like 4 to 7, really 4 to 6 are those sweet spots, are really where it's at. Like dialing from 1 to 2 versus from 4 to 5, 164% difference in the amount of times you're gonna contact people. So if we know, like it's like fishing. You don't go fishing in the middle of the day. The fish don't bite in the middle of the day. They bite first thing in the morning and last thing at the end of the day. Like you don't just decide, like, oh, I'm gonna fish at fucking 2 o'clock in Santee when there's no fish biting. They're all sleeping. Like it's the same thing with leads. Your best probability of connection, and if we want to increase our lead conversion, let's make our calls during the times the fish are biting, which is gonna be 8 to 11, 4 to 7. This part talks about the importance of dialing them quickly. So if we call a lead within from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, tiny little subtle difference, 900% increase in our contact rate by calling within 5 minutes versus 10. And then that just completely falls off a cliff when you get to 15, 20, 30 minutes. So another huge thing when it comes to lead conversion is really our response time. In 5 minutes, I would argue to you, this is a little bit older data, 5 minutes, that's now 50 seconds. I mean, when you guys get a lead that comes in, unless you are at church or having sex, you should pick up the freaking phone and call that lead immediately. Like drop whatever the hell it is that you're doing and call that lead. If you got a lead call coming in, answer that freaking call. Like the power of being on it is insane. There's a guy, Robert Slack, who's out of Florida. He has a call center and they pride themselves. I think their average response time is like 19 seconds and they have it tracked literally to the second. And that speed to leads everything, especially because some of these lead sources that are out there, you know, Zillow, they could check multiple boxes. Realtor.com is automatically sending it to 3 people, or some of these other ones, HomeLight and some of these things are sending these leads to 3 or 4 people. The first person that gets them on the phone is always going to have the highest probability of conversion, because once you're on the phone with them, they see those other calls coming in, they ignore them most of the time. That's why when you call after 10 minutes, they're not answering because they're on the phone with me.
And they don't recognize the number. And
Right.
They generally won't answer if you don't recognize it.
So speed to lead, and then the last one that's really important goes over the importance of how many call attempts you make. And so I know this is a little bit blurry, but this bar is 40%, 60, 80, 100. If we only make 1 call attempt to people, we've got roughly a 40% probability of connecting with them. But if we can actually take the time and make 6+ attempts, that goes up to 90%. So another thing that's really big for lead conversion is making sure we're not giving up after 1 or 2 attempts. And over here is a chart that actually shows the average number of attempts that people make is 1.5. So the average salesperson is making 1.5 call attempts, even though we know scientifically that we have a 90% probability if we make 6 attempts, we're going to connect with them. So this stuff's really, really, really powerful. So again, for lead conversion, 1, you got to know what to say, which is what you learn via role play. 2, you got to make sure that you're making your calls at the right time. 3, we got to do it extremely quick. And 4, we've got to do it persistently. We can't just make one call and give up on leads. We've got to call 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 60 times. I know all of us in here have some leads where we see it and it's like, oh, I already called them 10 times. It's a waste of time. I'm not going to call them again. Those are the best calls to make. A good example is Mike has 3 closings. All 3 of those are from leads that I gave him. And those of you guys know when he shifted over to his current role, he got cut off of leads. And that was 6 months ago, 7 months ago now. So what does that mean? All 3 of those deals he just closed are deals that he's been calling for 7+ months. Right? Yeah, all over a year old. We can't give up after 1 or 2 or 3 attempts. So even when you guys are like, if you're going through your database, you guys are fishing in the pond, don't think like, oh, these leads are a waste of time because it's from a year, 2, or 7 years ago. That they're not a waste of time. Just at that time, maybe they didn't get followed up with fast enough. Maybe they didn't get followed up persistently enough. Maybe they didn't get followed up with at the right time. Doesn't mean that they're never going to do any business. We got to stay on them because anybody who signed up on a website or came through an open house has some level of interest in real estate. And then it becomes right place, right time. And so by following this, we can ensure that we put ourselves in that right place as many times as possible. Cool. Anything else to add to that? And mix texting in. You guys have to be texting your leads. Don't just rely on phone calls. If you're not texting your leads, you're totally missing the boat. So you guys have got to incorporate texting.
So when I worked at the gym, I used to tell my sales consultants when people would just walk in and they'd be like, oh, I just want a tour. Well, and then my sales consultant would take them, walk them around the gym, and then walk them out the front door. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, well, they just wanted a tour. They're not really interested in joining. Do you think they like got lost and saw a gym and were like, oh, I'll go tour the gym? No, like that's a destination location. They took the time out of their day to get in their car, drive specifically to your gym, get out of the car. They're super uncomfortable because they're not in the best shape. They're walking into a gym. They have this preconceived notion. They're drunk monkey of everybody at the gym's in fantastic shape. So they walk in and they're like, I just want a tour. Okay, that's their script. Well, we fell into their script and just gave them a tour, slapped them on the butt, and said, see you later. These people that go online and click on I want more information on 123 Banana Street, they're not accidentally going on Zillow. They didn't like get a spamware that sent them there and then sent you their contact info. They're going out of their way and taking that awkward drunk monkey get off my back chance of getting more information on being a homeowner. Of, I'd like to see how much my home is worth. And when we call them and they're like, nope, I was just looking. That's their script. Don't let them let their drunk monkey win. It might not be the day they want to buy a house. It might not be the month that they want to sell their house. But understand that somewhere in their mind, they want to do a transaction. It is their goal to sell a house. It is their goal to buy a house. And it's our responsibility to be there for them. And let them know, cool, I get it. Today's not the day. That's awesome. You know, I'd love to send you more houses to look at. You know, what about this house caught your eye? And get that opening conversation going. Yeah, I respect it. You're not trying to buy a house online. That's fine, I get it. You know, but I help people with buying and selling homes, whether it's 8 years from now or 8 minutes from now. Let me help you. I'd love to be your contact. And earn that relationship and then build on it over time. They're going to do a transaction. And if we're not constantly in front of them, someone else will be. And then they'll get to do the transaction and not you. And that's not fair to the client because we're going to deliver better service and take care of them better than anybody else out there will. So you owe it to them to follow up.
I've been using a disarming opening line lately for internet leads because what do you hear most of the time when you talk to someone who you call? What do they say? So I say, hey, just wanted to introduce myself and see if you're thinking of moving in the next 3 to 6 months or if you're just browsing. It takes, that's what they're going to say anyways. I'm just browsing.
You took their script away.
Yeah. And then now we can actually have a conversation.
Yeah.
because you knew what they're gonna say.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Walking that fine line between qualifying leads and then following up on leads, can you guys with a lot more experience expound on that?
Well, I think following up is a constant state of qualifying. You know, and I think that initial conversation with the lead needs to be more rapport building and earning that trust to start a relationship. Because if you just get them on the phone and start going through a questionnaire and, you know, it sounds like you're taking a survey, you've lost them. But when you're reaching through the phone saying, hey, I get it. You just browsing, or were you looking to make a move in the next 3 to 6 months?
I really like that.
Gonna use that today. You know, it disarms them and it lets them know, okay, I can start sharing with you a little bit now. And then just kind of be pliable to what their wants and needs are. Because as they start trusting you more, they're gonna start being more honest. And it's going to go from, well, it's going to be like 6 months to a year to, yeah, my wife's going to have a baby in like 3 months and we really need something that's not 2 bedrooms, you know, because I want to make another kid.
I want to make another kid. I like that.
Yeah, they're fun.